for the community? Where's that for teaching people that there is another way and that there is a whole different way of looking at symptoms and symptomology and bodies and functioning and all of that? And, chiropractic's there, and it really is sort of mainstream. I mean, I talk a lot about alternative care on this show, and I do that because nobody's ever exposed to it. Nobody ever hears about it. I had never heard of several of these different healing modalities. I had never even heard of them, even me being a chiropractor, because chiropractic is so mainstream.
Right.
But is it?
It is. Well, it's come a long way, but
we really kind of straddle that border between the alternative and the mainstream. It is a tipping point. And I want it to tip in the alternative way as far as, education and letting the community know that there are other ways and there are other means and methods to managing your health. But especially for me, it's important about the chiropractic part of it, because I'm like, how do you not know about how your nervous system runs your body? Their eyes get so big when they're on my table and I'm touching a point and I'm telling them what this point's related to. And then I go to a different point. I'm like, and this point's related to it and that one hurts. And then I go to a different one and this point relates to it as well and that one hurts. And after we get done with them, none of them hurt. And the body and the brain all connected, and the mind is just blown. Mm-hmm. The people's minds are just blown by this. And I'm like, it's your nervous system. It's
all connected.
It's your nervous system. Like, don't you remember back in school when they taught you about your nerves and how your nerves, they go from your brain and they form the spinal cord and they come out from there and they branch out into all the different organs and tissues and parts. And, this is how your body runs. This is how the brain sends messages. And they just look at me.
They remember the cardiovascular system, but they don't remember the nervous system. And the nervous system's bigger.
It's bigger and it's so
does
much
more
important.
Things, right?
It's why everything in your body works. Everything.
It's like you're hot wiring. It's like you're wiring, right?
Yeah. If you didn't have it, your brain is your computer. And your wires are the nerve, or the nerves are the wires, and that, sends all the messages. And if you didn't have it, you wouldn't have any messages, so you'd be like a little limp, lump of nothing, just scooting around as best you could.
Right.
You'd be like a slug. Slugs don't have that much nervous system.
And you'd have to focus to breathe. You'd have to think to breathe. You'd have to think to swallow. You would have to think...
Right.
Yeah.
How do people not know that? Or like when I talk about different organs, adrenal glands, what's that?
Yeah, they're very underrated gland.
Oh, my gosh.
There's not enough known about, not enough talked about the adrenal glands.
No, and they're so huge.
Right.
And how much it affects us and our stress levels and everything and all our glandular system and our hormones and our, adrenals.
I bet if you went out on the street and you asked people when you get an adrenaline rush, where does it start?
Right.
They would not know that there was a gland called the adrenal gland.
No, they wouldn't. And why couldn't they?
We should be man on the corner.
Well, yeah.
Woman on the corner.
But then we'd just be crazies.
Oh.
Well, we are. But what I mean by that is that, nobody would take us seriously. But if it was taught in school.
Right.
Hello. It is legit. It's very legit. You know what I had one time? I had a wonderful lady approach me, or she just kind of was talking off the top of her head. She happened to be in a position where she could have made this happen. And she just was talking off the top of her head. She's like, I think what we need you to go in and teach these emergency room doctors how to evaluate a patient properly. And I looked at her, and I just, from the bottom of me rumbling up, just started to chuckle and belly laugh. I'm like, yeah. I said, you set that up. You get all the people that are going to come for that training together, and I'll be there. I promise you I will be there. Never heard from her again,
stuff,
but, you know.
I like that.
I do, too, but, that would be totally foreign to an emergency room physician.
And
what?
Yes.
I have to learn what from whom? What?
Yeah.
But
You
really, it
gotta
shouldn't
be
be
kidding
that
me.
way.
No, it shouldn't be.
that way.
No, it shouldn't be.
But I thought it was
is.
funny.
It
was funny. It was funny, and I would love to see that happen, but I just couldn't imagine that right now, this moment in time, that was going to come to fruition.
No.
So,
no.
But it was great. It was great thinking about it. It gave me a really good chuckle.
I bet, yes.
But, you know,
it is
I
very
could
amusing.
I could see in 25 years if we put it into the schools and we made it more mainstream, and then, yes, emergency room physicians would be able to assess this way, which would save millions and millions and millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars in diagnostic testing, because you know how you go in there and they're like, oh, let's test this, let's test that, and let's test this. Before you know it, you got a $25,000 bill.
Right. Yep.
And you're like, wow. And they're like, you know, we couldn't find anything, but we think you're pretty good, so you can go home now.
And
you're
it
like,
may or may not happen again.
Right?
That's the thing I hate.
And it's, you know, $25,000 later, and you still don't know what the problem is. And I've got probably a 10-minute assessment that could at least narrow it down to organ system. You know? At least narrow it down to, you know, the correct.
I'm sorry, but that's funny.
Functional.
And it would cost 1/100th of the cost.
Exactly. Exactly. And
my gosh.
And if the average person could do that on their own, then they could walk into a doctor's office and say, look, my left arch has been bothering me for 3 weeks, my left shoulder for a week and a half, and this point behind my ear is super sore. So that tells me my pancreas is having dysfunction. What are we going to do about that? Wow. Wow. You just did half my job. Thank you.
Yes.
I'm going to order this very specific test
For your pancreas.
I'm going to suggest these very specific dietary suggestions for you. And we're going to recheck you to see how things are going in, 3 to 4 weeks. Let's see how things go. But no, they instead, people walk in like, I've got this, and this. And they're like, okay, well, we better set up 4 different scenarios because we're going to look at this symptom separately. We're going to do all kinds of stuff for the shoulder pain. We're going to do all kinds of other stuff for the foot pain.
And take these pills.
And we're going to do all kinds of other stuff to check out this. And that spot on the back of your head, that's all in your head. So I'm going to give you some, antidepressants for that. I mean, it's just like, it's like the guys, what was it? What's that story with the elephant? The blind wise men touching the elephant.
I don't know this story.
You never heard that?
No.
Well, there was like 5, I don't know how many. I'm sorry, I'm going to totally warp the story,
okay,
which
let's
is what
say
I
5.
always do. We're going to say 5. And they're all touching an elephant in a different spot. And they're blind. Oh. And they have to describe what they're touching. So one says it's a rope. I'm touching a rope.
Right.
He's got the trunk.
Right.
He's like, wow, it's big, thick rope, Or maybe that was the tail.
Okay.
I don't know what the heck I'm talking about.
Let's
but
say
anyways,
the tail. That
so
makes more
every
sense.
part of the body was something different. So you ask these blind wise men, which is really a beautiful statement
It
in of
is.
itself, these blind wise men, to describe what they're... So the one with the leg was touching the trunk of a tree, he thought.
Oh, right. I can see that.
Okay, the one at the tail was a rope.
Right.
The one at I can't remember the trunk one. I don't know. Maybe a snake. He thought it was a snake.
Okay.
A boa constrictor or something.
All right.
So anyways, the whole point of that is that, you got all these wise blind men looking at these different areas of the body, and not one of them can look at it and go, oh, boom, 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 boom. Those are all reflex points for pancreas. Let's just check your pancreas. Right?
So they're educated in parts instead of a whole.
No, they're educated differently. They come at it from a different philosophy. They're looking at symptom. It's symptom-based medicine.
Right, instead of
function-based medicine, where you look for the root cause of the issue.
But the root cause of the issue makes so much more sense to me.
It does, but when it's nervous system oriented, that's just, I blame a little bit of that on chiropractic, because chiropractic really wants to keep it to themselves. They really do. The philosophy of chiropractic is awesome. I love it. Don't get me wrong. Love it. Live it. Eat, drink, sleep it every day. But also, I realize that it's very isolatory in a way, because...
That's a good word, Julia.
I don't know if it's a real word.
I like it, though.
I don't know if it's real. It's not real. Patrick says, not real. He's calling me on it. Okay, but anyways, it isolates us, because what I was always told, and I may get this wrong too, that's just me, but this is how my brain filters it, okay? Back in the day, back turn of the century, we had chiropractors, we had DOs, doctors of osteopath, and we had MDs. And the MDs would be either general practitioners or specialists. The DOs and the chiropractors were the ones who manipulated. Okay, so the DOs were not like an MD back at the turn of the century. They were more like chiropractors. Chiropractors and osteopaths come from the same background. They have a slightly different methodology and principles and the way they adjust. And from what I understand, osteopaths are more of a global approach to adjusting, like whole spine adjusting, whereas chiropractic is more specific to the segment. The one segment, not the entire spine. So there's a difference in style and in philosophy and background. But anyways, the whole thing about it is that they decided, we were getting crowded out. I mean, they were putting chiropractors in jail for practicing chiropractic. They were like, they were saying, no, we don't want you. We don't want you. We don't want the competition of you. We don't want the idea of you. So if you practice chiropractic that is not medically sound, we're going to put you in jail. And there was a lot of martyrs, chiropractic martyrs back in the day.
That's sad.
That went to jail over practicing chiropractic because they were so passionate and they wanted it to survive, and they refused to give in to the pressure. So anyways, long story short, the osteopaths, they didn't have the gumption for that. They just decided they were going to be more allopathic. So they were, for lack of a better term, absorbed into the medical allopathic world. And nowadays, they don't get a lot of instruction in manipulation. They do still get some, from what I understand, but it's very little comparatively to what chiropractors, because I've had people come in and say, oh, I've been adjusted all my life. My osteopath always adjusted me. And I'm like, that's great, and I'm super glad, but it's a totally different type and style of adjustment. So you'll notice the differences between chiropractic and osteopathic adjusting because it's totally different style, very viable and beautiful and wonderful. But I do question, the soundness of the approaches because of the fact that they don't give them as much instruction. I mean, I worked in school hands-on for 3 to 4 years. I mean, it wasn't a weekend seminar we were attending, So, and I'm not suggesting that's what the DOs do either. I don't know what the schooling is as far as manipulation goes, but I know that it's varied, and I know that it's less than what it used to be, say, 50 years ago in the osteopathic world. So the doctors of osteopath were absorbed into the medical community. They became DOs. And DOs are basically interchangeable today. MDs and DOs, people think of it as the same thing. GP, they're all the same thing. General practitioner, medical doctor, DOs, pretty much the same thing. They're going to do the same things. Some of them still do manipulate, but mostly they, perform, small surgeries in-house, and they take care of things, order tests, do prescriptions, like a regular medical doctor does. So they do both. They straddle it. They do both. But chiropractic has really kept themselves to themselves. Like, they were animate. The healers from way back, the chiropractors from way back that started this all were animate that chiropractic had to stay separate and distinct from the medical world. And so they kind of, quotations, got the rights, got the copyrights,
right,
to specific adjusting and neural anatomy. And I mean, obviously, if you're a neurosurgeon, you're going to know anatomy really well. But otherwise, you put a chiropractor against an MD, I bet you the chiropractor wins out on anatomy every time.
I bet you're right.
Every time, because we have a different focus, and that's just it. We have a totally different focus. And if you compare school hours, MD to chiropractic, chiropractors actually, generally speaking, have a few more school hours than MDs do. And then they'll say, oh, but they don't, MDs have to do the 4-year residency. Well, chiropractors, we have to do a residency as well, but we do it in-house, in clinic, in school. While we're going to school, we're also working in the clinic. We're working with the public. They have